So you guys know I feature a lot of smartphones here on the channel. It's sometimes it feels like it's a new smartphone almost every other day. And to be honest, it's sometimes you're not all that excited about every single release because a lot of them seem to be like other releases. Today, that's not the case. Today I have a smartphone in front of me that I'm pretty certain I'm going to put my SIM card in as my next daily phone because it's bringing something a little bit different from a brand who, for whatever reason, I don't get that much exposure to. That is changing right now. This is the Xperia 1 Mark II from Sony, and this device has some stuff in it that you just don't see in other smartphones. To start with, the Sony camera tech in the autofocus department that they're putting into this smartphone is stuff that they pulled from their pro cameras or semi-pro cameras, their mirrorless stuff, and even their cinema stuff. Right now, I'm speaking to you through a Sony A7 series camera. That camera over on the side there, I believe, is a Sony A9. I have so many Sony mirrorless cameras in here, and I selected them because they have tremendous autofocus in the full-frame camera segment, which, believe it or not, is not something that a lot of other camera makers are competitive in as it stands right now. And you don't have to look around far on YouTube to see a number of pro or daily YouTubers using Sony's A series for that reason. Now, if that tech can trickle into a smartphone, if you care about the camera at all, then you're going to be looking at something special in the form of the Xperia 1 Mark II. I mean, even the fact that they put the word mark in there, which they use for their cameras, that stuff has me pumped on its own. But it doesn't end there. And I know I'm talking a lot before I'm getting into the box, but it just feels, I'm excited, I'm telling you. The display on here is a proper 4K display with possibly the highest PPI on the market. I don't know, probably the highest PPI I've ever seen. PPI of 643. That is 3840 by 1644. It is a tremendous number of pixels in here. So it is a triple camera setup with Zeiss coating on the lenses as well. That's another relationship that Sony has that they're pulling from their camera expertise. 12 megapixel, 12 megapixel, 12 megapixel. You have an f1.7 24mm wide with a large sensor, larger than what Sony did in their flagship last time, 1/1.7. It's got dual pixel autofocus. You have a 16mm wide angle lens, and you have a 70mm telephoto. 8 megapixels on the front for the selfie camera. The display, as I mentioned, 6.5 inches, 4K HDR OLED. It has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. Now this, I know, look, there's flagships out there, they got bigger batteries, and normally I'd be complaining about only having a 4,000 milliamp hour battery in a device of this price. And I might just be willing to put up with it, especially since it's got some form of fast charge. Apparently it can get 50% of its battery life in about half an hour, and it also has wireless charging. So yes, I wish that was bigger, but we'll see how it performs. It, of course, has to have the Snapdragon 865, and it's also IP6568, so it is going to have some water resistance as well. Now, I should mention the price real quick. Yes, it will be expensive, $1199. And that puts it in a really competitive territory for your flagship money, but they're going to have a pre-order promo, which I think is pretty interesting. And normally I would look at a promo like this and be like, I don't want the promo, I just wish it had a lower price. But the promo in this case on the pre-order is a free pair of these headphones. So for $1199, you get these included, the XM3s. And again, normally this would be no big deal to me. Oh, so what? They gave you headphones. But these happen to be my favorite wireless headphones on planet Earth, still to this day. And so now that's a real bonus. You can pick up both of these for $1199, which to me, since I like these headphones so much, again, you have to be in the market for headphones. If you already own these, that ain't gonna help you. Here is the smartphone first, and you can probably tell with the 21:9 aspect ratio, you get a very narrow phone, which makes it easier to use with a single hand while still maintaining a large display by making it taller. All right, let me pull this out. Ooh, yes. So that's a comfy feel in the hand. And it does have a forehead and a chin. And this has kind of been a staple for Sony. They've decided to invest in other departments of the device instead of necessarily working with notches. Maybe this has to do with their cinema background where they want to protect the proper rectangle for your viewing experience. And this is evidenced by their choice to go with the 21:9 display, which is something that's kind of exclusive to cinema. So if you load up a movie in its native format, you'll actually fill the display with no black bars. On the back of the device here, you can see that camera setup. It is, like I said, a triple camera unit. I did mention it also supports wireless charging. This is a fairly low-key unboxing experience. It's very Sony. The power brick is 18-watt USB PD, USB Type-C, and it has a Type-C cable as well. And then, also they do include a standard headset, an in-ear style headset with microphone, because that is correct. This thing also includes a headphone jack. That is pretty wild. On a flagship device in 2020, this is becoming way more difficult to find, if you can find it at all, and it is here on the Xperia 1 Mark II. Now, the other thing that's unusual about this device is that the fingerprint scanner, they've got it on the side. It's a thumbprint where the power switch is instead of something in display or on the back. It's another thing that Sony's been doing, and it just makes things a little more exciting for me to test out a different approach. Volume is up above the power switch, and then the other side simply has your SIM card section, which looks like you open it up with your fingernail. You do. You open up the SIM card tray with your fingernail rather than needing a tool. That is an odd little advantage, I suppose, for somebody who switches SIM cards fairly frequently. Also, I just realized with the expandable storage there for the heavy camera users that may want to extract that micro SD card and plug that straight into their system to offload footage, that's an option that you have there, which wouldn't really make sense with a smartphone that requires a SIM tool because you'd be popping that thing out all the time. Bottom of the device is going to have your USB-C connector. You can also see the microphone there. This is the black color, bit of a fingerprint magnet. I'm sure you can tell already. It'll come in a couple of different colors, black or purple by the looks of it. Anyway, this is the black one. That's the one I would choose. Call me boring. I gotta look at it every day. I love the simplicity of black. I don't know if you cut the shirts in a hat. So apparently it also has stereo speakers built in. Actually, I just want to pop up the press release because this device is so fresh. I mentioned before the autofocus that Sony is famous for on their higher end cameras that they've apparently integrated into here. This one is going to be capable of 20 FPS continuous photo shooting, which apparently is the first time that has popped up in a smartphone ever. And that comes back to the advanced autofocus that Sony uses. This autofocus, in my experience on their dedicated cameras with human eye tracking, pet eye tracking, is some of the best that I've ever used on a dedicated camera. So to see it in a smartphone is just exciting to me. Now, what's interesting about Sony, I mean, as you're probably aware, they're in so many different product categories. It's not just cameras. You also probably have heard of something called the Sony PlayStation. And I remember unboxing gaming phones from Sony dating back to that one that flipped around. I honestly can't even remember the name right now. Somebody will let me know down in the comments. I made a video once upon a time. This one also leverages some of that expertise by allowing you to connect this thing to a standard DualShock controller so that you can get some competitive gaming done. It even has a game mode on it to enhance your gameplay. This 4K display is wild. Holy moly, the pixels in here. It is probably the sharpest display on a smartphone, at least any of the major flagships. Now, when it comes to the autofocus that I mentioned, one of the ways in which Sony has been able to get better performance out of this particular unit is through the larger sensor on the back, which is 1.5 times bigger than on the previous version. Bigger sensor means greater sensitivity to light, which improves autofocus substantially. And autofocus has been something I've been really critical about on smartphones, particularly on some flagships like the S20 Ultra, which for me, it did get better as software updates rolled out, but the autofocus was never, it wasn't smooth enough for me, particularly in video mode. It was causing a little bit of frustration. This is an area where I hope Sony nailed it. If it's anything like their cameras, we are booted up. We'll check the screen brightness, max it out. You can see it's fairly stock looking Android. Almost, it's like fully stock. Is it fully stock? Wow. It feels fully stocked to me. There might be some tweaks to it, but if there are, it is not major. So you're not getting any kind of fancy refresh, but apparently Sony is using some sort of motion blur. I'm reading it here on the press release. Motion blur reduction technology is equivalent to that of a 90 hertz display and reduces frame lag for a clearer image quality. All right, I don't know about all that. I think this is a bit of a setback for me coming from a 120 hertz display on previous flagships. That said, if I have to make that sacrifice, at least in this case, I'm getting extra pixels and sharpness because after all, this is a 4K display, which is kind of unheard of. This PPI is not something that's seen on any other flagship, so you're giving something up, but you are getting something back. Here's the coolest part. By default, look at this app. Cinema Pro and also Photo Pro. And again, maybe I'm a bit of a camera nerd. A lot of people in the tech space on YouTube happen to be because, well, we shoot videos for a living, so we pay attention to camera stuff. Just that logo with a real cinema camera on it, you launch into it, and you're getting access to features you would never expect to see on a smartphone. Cinematography Pro. Sony has a long history developing professional imaging. This mode enables you to shoot cinematic footage using a workflow and looks based on their flagship Cine Alta Venice camera. That camera, I don't know, it's like $100,000. It's legit. If you watch a show on Netflix, it's coming off that camera in a lot of cases, also in Hollywood. You can apply looks to your image to give it a more cinematic vibe and actually increase the dynamic range or your ability to make it look like a professional image even in post. You set up your project like you would in a professional camera with your FPS as well as your resolution. You set your camera either to manual focus. You can see you can set focus points. My goodness, this is... Again, I realize I'm getting overly excited here, but for anyone that makes videos for a living or a camera nerd, this is some wild control to have on your smartphone. Mate, I want to shoot the whole show on this particular phone. That might be difficult. But like, look at this. That is ridiculous. Just the appearance of this, so professional within a smartphone. H.265 codec. You have your battery indicator as well as your available memory left over, which of course that would begin to drain as you started to shoot your video. And so the point of this, for those of you that are unfamiliar, what this lets you do by picking these various looks is it allows you to have a little bit more leeway on the image you're shooting as opposed to completely crushing it or making it look dynamic artificially. So a lot of cameras, they want to make colors pop. They want to have tremendous contrast. But the problem with that is sometimes you can get your highlights blown out, or sometimes you can crush your shadows too much where you lose detail. So the idea of having a look like Venice CS is to flatten everything out so that you have more headroom to work with in your video file, and then you can boost it up after. When you go to edit it, you can do whatever you want with the color. So why don't we run a test? Let's run a test in Venice CS. So we're shooting in 24 millimeters, and it's actually in manual focus, so I'm gonna mess with that and just grab my slider. Whoa, there. Let's grab focus on the plant as we have. It is so finely tuned. It's kind of incredible. And it's actually smooth to set. Now you can set different points on here and have it move between them, but it is some tremendous professional control here where you might want to run a clip where you actually bring something into focus nice and slow. Wow. Oh man, you can tell I am too pumped up already. It's hard to get that degree of manual focus control in video on any smartphone because the apps don't allow for it or it hasn't been well thought out. Obviously Sony here leaning into their camera DNA to figure out how to make a video shooting smartphone. Now, the thing is, you don't have to use that professional Cinema Pro app. You can just go into the camera app as well if you want a more simplified experience. As you can see, this is a more traditional Android camera layout where you can just flick back and forth between video and photo if you're the type of person who wants to leave it in automatic mode. So we'll run a test clip with this one. So this is the standard lens here, and you can see it's way more color in there. Now some people, they're just going to want to pop this open, shoot a nice looking video, have the camera autofocus on its own. Actually, let's grab this Sony camera and see how it definitely figures out focus very nicely. And again, that's all automatic if you don't want to make it too complicated. So yes, this mode exists for people who want to jump in, create something quickly, share it quickly, and so forth, and want to avoid the complexity of the Pro app. I like that they made it a separate app, so you're not getting clouded by all those extra features when you don't necessarily want them. So as far as the 3 cameras are concerned, I'm going to switch to the still photo. We have these 3 options available to us. This is the standard focal range kablamo. We also have that 70mm zoom on there. Boom, that's that. And then last but not least, we have the 16mm wide. And look at this, it actually has some lens correction. When using the super wide lens, you can either go for more quality or lens correction, which looks like it's gonna crop in a little bit. This is nice to have this option as opposed to having it just do it automatically. Maybe you want that kind of fisheye effect to happen. There's your ultra wide. So what does this give you? Again, camera versatility. Man, that is one of the best ultra wide images I have seen on a smartphone. Oh goodness. Often the ultra wide is where you really take a hit on these smartphone cameras because of the sensor. It's a bonus. They give you the ultra wide. It's like you can get people in the frame if need be from a utilitarian standpoint, but this looks like a real option to use instead of the standard wide. There's the telephoto. It's okay, it's nice, but it's not blowing me away quite as much as And then your standard focal range, which is going to be your best performer, your biggest sensor. It's going to operate the best within autofocus and all the rest of it. Now, let me flip this around and do the selfie as well. 3, 2, 1. Whoa. Yes. The camera background of Sony is finally paying off. It's paying off in a smartphone. Things are happening here. Wow. Yeah, guys, I'm telling you. I mean, I don't even take selfies, but I'm telling you, beyond the Cinema Pro mode, there's also a Photo Pro mode. Think of it the same way, essentially. Photo Pro is going to give you some of the features that you've come to love on the Sony Alpha Pro series cameras. This looks a lot like their camera interfaces. The other crazy thing in the photo mode is this 20 FPS still photos. Oh my goodness gracious! And that's how you want to hold it. Continuous high. I know this feature, this setting from their dedicated cameras. Continuous high. Now watch me hold down the shutter real quick. Oh! Oh! 20 FPS on a phone! Guys! Listen! I'm telling you, this is the next daily. It's easy for me to say this is the next daily right now. It's just too much. There's too much I want to experiment with. I just want to see how close this thing can get to replacing an actual dedicated Sony camera inside of something that obviously is far more slender and is in your pocket all the time. Now, this is the Game Enhancer mode. The Game Enhancer improves your gaming experience. You can prevent notifications from showing up while gaming, change performance settings, and more. So obviously, this is not a gaming phone, but it's got a Snapdragon 865, so throw whatever game you want on there. What about multimedia? They made some big claims about multimedia, obviously, with the high-res display. They have Netflix pre-installed, so they obviously do care. Now, me, I'm more of a YouTube guy. What happens to a typical YouTube video? My videos are shot in a more standard television type of aspect ratio, 16:9. But now, with these types of devices existing, it's becoming harder to justify publishing 16:9. All devices are getting taller, but this one is especially tall at 21:9. But it's okay because that's part of the reason why I shoot the channel a bit wide, so that even on these wide displays, when you crop in, you're not chopping off my head, as you can see. Now let me just increase the quality here. Up to, look at that, 2160p option on a phone. Tremendous. Many different colors available, but weirdly a lot of them are on pre-order. It's vibrating. They have the Air 1. I don't know if I'm into it. I'm gonna turn the vibration off. Which is a smaller version of it. And then they've got a new in-ear style, which is, I guess, their pro model, pro version. You know, you won't be able to pick up this one because it's products they have. If you
it's real stereo.
Past, I've had a hard time finding an AirPods alternative that I like that is in the exact same design style as AirPods.
It's not the best sounding. It is stereo. It's just a little bit muffled. I don't know if there's more settings available. Oh, okay. Few more settings here. Dolby Atmos. See what happens to the YouTube video. Same video.
We're back, and today
that sounds a billion times better.
Video. Many gadgets to go through. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Wow.
5 cool gadgets. Hopefully they're cool. Well, I mean, we're going to find out. That's kind of the point of the show.
It's about a billion times better. Make sure that you turn that stuff on. I presume it's just the Dolby component, some sort of an EQ on the content, but the clarity just boosted substantially. Now, the other thing I want to try is this side-mounted fingerprint scanner, and this is your power switch, so your thumb is going to be here. It's going to live here a lot anyways. Okay, it's not crazy quick. With that animation, it feels maybe slower than it is. You have to take that animation. That's a bit unfortunate. There's like a slow fade to it, which makes it feel slower than it might be. Either way, it's not the fastest fingerprint unlock in 2020 by any means. I realize I don't have the fast refresh, which I've talked about so much, and you guys are saying, Lou, you're crazy. Why you tell me how badly you want that? I do want the fast refresh, and I wish this had that in it. Like I said earlier, at least they're going after resolution and providing you with this crazy amount of pixels in a 6.5-inch smartphone. That is the unboxing video. I may have to do a follow-up on this because of those various camera modes and the fact that I want to use it more extensively. But so far, so good. The cinema-inspired Xperia 1 Mark II, one of the only 21:9 smartphones, maybe the highest resolution display on a smartphone, and one of the only smartphones that gives you professional tools that are similar to what you would get in an actual dedicated camera. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. It's obviously a very crowded market as it stands right now for flagship smartphones, and particularly smartphones where you're spending this kind of cash. Where does this one stack up? Would you consider it for your money? And does the special deal with the XM3s put you over the top to actually go ahead and consider it? I believe this goes on sale to order on June 1st. Do you take this or an S20 Ultra? Do you take this or a OnePlus 8 Pro? Do you take this or an iPhone 11 Pro? Where does this one fit in for you from an interest level, from a hype level? I want to know.